Hello everyone, welcome to the Frostburg Experience. I'm Tim Magrath, Executive Director of the J. Glenn Bell Jr. Institute for Public Affairs. Today, I welcome you to our special election edition of the Frostburg Experience. With elections coming up November 8th, we felt it was a good time to host a discussion between student representatives of the two main presidential candidates. I will be serving as moderator for this discussion. Joining us in our discussion are students Michael Bartholomew, Senior Political Science, Law and Society, Philosophy major, and Vincent Hession, Junior Economics major. Today, Michael will be representing Secretary Hillary Clinton, and Vincent will be representing Mr. Donald Trump. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will ask a series of questions to the representatives covering broad topics, such as foreign policy, the economy, and individual rights issues. Each representative will have an opportunity to respond. I will, as appropriate, ask for clarification or present a follow-up question. Let's begin. Michael, what does Secretary Clinton believe to be the country's biggest current issue?
Well, currently the biggest issue facing our country is the economy. We're facing a shrinking of the middle class. We're facing a system where the top 1% are growing and the bottom 99% are not receiving that wealth. Our poor class is growing and the middle class is shrinking because of that. And to add to all of that, our students are leaving college with thousands and tens of thousands of dollars in student debt. And quite frankly, there needs to be something done about this to prevent a huge economic crisis in the future.
Same question, Vince. What do you think?
To Donald Trump right now, the biggest problems are immigration, terrorism, and the economy. The main problems concerning Americans right now is the fact that wages have stagnated, that people are able to come in and do the jobs that Americans should have been doing at a lot less of a wage, and it needs to be fairer for the American citizen.
Good. I guess we'll move on from there. And how does Mr. Trump propose to deal with global terrorism?
Mr. Trump decided that we should be working with other countries like Russia, for example, who's been fighting ISIS in Syria. He's also wanted to have more screening for people coming into the country and temporary bans on immigration from high-risk areas.
Okay. Michael, what do you think about Secretary Clinton in this regards? How does she propose to deal with this enormous issue of global terrorism?
Well, Secretary Clinton's idea of dealing with global terrorism is working with our allies in the Middle East, working with current allies. And when we're dealing with threats such as ISIS and global terrorism, we have to work with those minority groups. We have to work with the Muslims who are coming into our country. It's detrimental to our cause to shun them out and try to prevent them from entering the country. All that does is fester up anger and hatred. We need to have those people working with us, because having them hate us is what ISIS wants. And we need to continue our airstrikes in Syria and in that area and really cause an end to the Syrian civil war and hit ISIS where it hurts.
Good. Michael, where does Secretary Clinton stand on the issue of oil dependency?
Well, the main thing with oil dependency for America right now is that we need to focus on green energy. We need to put investments into things like solar and wind energy and use the technologies we have and invest in future technologies for that so that we no longer have to be dependent on oil. Secretary Clinton wants America to cut down fossil fuel emissions 80% by 2050. And if we follow her plans, we can do that, and we can become the first superpower in the world to be completely energy efficient. And that's how we stop being dependent on oil.
Vince, Mr. Trump, on oil dependency?
Donald Trump wants the Americans to actually be oil independent by the year 2020. What he wants is America to actually be able to get the oil out of the lands that are currently unavailable, like in federal lands, also cutting regulation on them so that they can actually compete with the foreign oil, as well as cutting regulation to things like nuclear or other energy. He doesn't want it to be just a fossil fuel economy, but the government should not be picking winners and losers.
I see. If elected, how will Mr. Trump manage overall relations with our allies?
Well, right now he wants to strengthen the relationship with our allies. However, there are things like, for example, NATO members who don't pay enough for the military protection that they should. and he wants them to actually have to either pay for the services we're giving them or pay enough that they can be the members.
Very good. How about Michael? You know, Mrs. Clinton's got some serious experience with foreign affairs. How would she manage the relationships with our allies?
Well, Secretary Clinton has extensive experience in foreign affairs with her tenure as Secretary of State. She knows all these people. She knows the leaders of these foreign countries, and she knows how to work with them. We need to be working with our allies in Europe and the Middle East and Asia, and we shouldn't be shunning them and reneging on our support for them. You know, if Donald is elected, he's going to tell them that we're not going to support them anymore unless they pay us. And with the country, with the world in the shape it is now, with terrorist threats being more present than ever, that's not the attitude we can take, and we can't be throwing off our supporters in Germany or in Europe and Asia and go into the hands of the Russians. So
let's just mention that again. You suppose that Secretary Clinton's strategy would be to strengthen our allies, or strengthen our relationship with our allies. We're interconnected, or do you think she'll back away from some of these agreements, like the trade agreements that's currently pending?
I think that Secretary Clinton she's a very smart, experienced woman. She's going to do what's smart for America, but she's not going to do it in a way that hurts our relationship with other countries, especially the ones that we already have.
Vince, you want to respond to that? Do you think there's strength in allies, or do you think Donald Trump will back away from some of these alliances that we've had in the past?
There is strength in allies. However, one of the main problems with Secretary Clinton right now is her stance on Russia and the fact that she wants to have a no-fly zone over Syria, which could possibly spark a war either between the Syrian government or the Russian government.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your responses. When we return, we'll discuss issues affecting our nation's economy. Please stay tuned.
A boy born in Joplin, Missouri was fascinated by anything with wheels and a motor. The odds of him going on to fascinate millions with his talent? 1 in 260,000. The odds of this born racer having 157 career top 10 finishes in NASCAR? 1 in 125 billion. The odds of him winning both the Daytona 500 and the Brickyard 400 in the same year? 1 in 195 million. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. I'm NASCAR driver Jamie McMurray, and my niece has autism.
Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Lead paint poisoning affects 1 million children today. If you're pregnant or have young children and your home was built before 1978, you could be at risk. Learn how to protect your family. To find your home's danger zones, the health effects, or just to find help, log on to leadfreekids.org.
Welcome back to our special election edition of the Frostburg Experience. Again, I'm joined by students Vincent, Hession, representing Donald Trump, and Michael Bartholomew, representing Hillary Clinton. We're now going to discuss issues related to our nation's economy. To Michael, how does Secretary Clinton plan to help create jobs for the country?
Secretary Clinton's plan to create jobs for the country is, her first big plan is to have the biggest infrastructure bill, reconstruction bill that we've had in 10 years. Over the past administration, Congress has refused to pass a bill on infrastructure, and Secretary Clinton intends to use that to help build up job growth.
Very good. And Vincent, what do you think about Mr. Trump?
One of his biggest issues in the election has been trade deals, and he wants to have a lot of the trade deals renegotiated to bring jobs back from overseas, to bring them back from Mexico, and also other things like cutting regulation, which would encourage GDP growth and things like that.
Okay, let's follow up on that question. Actually, how do you actually bring those jobs back, though? I mean, do you provide incentives, or, I mean, these jobs, in many cases, are they actually going to return, or is this rhetoric?
Well, that's a lot of that is up for debate. However, there are countries like Mexico that have a tariff on U.S. goods while we don't have a tariff for their goods. So either they would have to take down that tariff and our imports or exports to them would go up, which would increase the amount of jobs here. And also countries like China, which have tariffs on our goods and also block goods from entering their market while they allow all their goods to flow in here, and we don't really block it nearly as much.
Michael, you want to respond to that? I think Secretary Clinton's husband signed the NAFTA free trade agreement. So there are tariffs in between Mexico and the United States?
Well, in order to solve the issue of companies going overseas, the answer is not to cut regulation. The answer is to go after those people who are exploiting the loopholes to put their companies overseas. Those people are putting jobs where they shouldn't be and taking them away from the American experience. What we need to do is close our tax code and make it so that those companies can't go overseas to avoid taxing. We need to crack down on those people who would do that and hurt the American economy.
This notion of a free trade, I guess, is kind of a central issue of this election, and both candidates have basically taken strong positions on free trade. But I was thinking Donald Trump, more than anything, has basically made it sound like free trade is a bad thing, although this seems to be like the basic tenet of the Republican Party, to have free trade. How does that reconcile with the platform of the Republican Party, I guess?
Well, right now, the way that trade has been working, it's not free trade. All these trade agreements and all the tariffs and other blocks that are on the countries make it a trade that is not free. If free trade exists between countries, it's fine, and Trump has no problem with that. But it's where free trade doesn't exist and we're getting ripped off. That is a problem.
Well, very good, Vincent. One of the major issues, I guess, facing the American public is the Supreme Court justice here, and both candidates have taken a pretty different approach in terms of who they're going to appoint. This issue of Roe versus Wade and abortion kind of hangs in the balance. Do you want to respond to that, Michael? What kind of candidate will Secretary Clinton propose or nominate for the Supreme Court?
Okay. Secretary Clinton is going to nominate somebody who is going to, continue things such as like basic tenets such as Roe versus Wade, is not going to try to overturn them. Ideally, a candidate or a nominee presented by Secretary Clinton will be someone willing to look at a lot of the gridlock facing the American country and do things to fix problems we have, such as gerrymandering, that are really fundamentally hurting the way that American politics is done.
Good. Donald Trump, has he taken any position on abortion?
He has. He stated he's pro-life. However, he also wanted to say, or he wants to appoint judges that would be pro-life as well, and they would likely overturn Roe v. Wade. However, he wants abortion to be a state's issue.
I see. I mean, one of the major issues that your generation is facing is this enormous budget deficit that's been, approaching $19 trillion, the debt, national debt. Tax cuts, how is that going to work? Is this going to create more problems, or do we see tax cuts in terms of growing the economy and bringing in additional revenue?
Well, what we really need to do, what Secretary Clinton proposes, is cutting taxes for the middle class and the poor, but we need to stop letting that top 1% getting away with not paying all their taxes. People like Donald Trump, who are proud of the fact that they have not paid federal income tax. We need to close the tax code and make those people pay their fair share to the American people.
Okay. Vincent, you want to have any comments about Donald Trump's sort of position on his tax cutting scheme?
Yeah, his idea is to cut taxes across the board, and especially when it comes to taxes on the rich right now, the effective tax rate that they pay is about 21% compared to what they should be paying, which is, close to 40%. So just lowering the tax rate by itself would increase the effective tax rate, because now trying to avoid the taxes is less profitable.
These are historic times, and part of the history is basically we have two of some of the most unpopular candidates that the electorate has faced. Some of these unpopularity are based on some of the different scandals that both candidates are dealing with currently. Hillary Clinton with her emails, Donald Trump with maybe some unwarranted sexual advancement to women. Do you want to comment on potentially, Michael, on this email scandal?
Yeah. The thing with the emails is it's really been a scheme by the Republican Party to paint Hillary Clinton in the worst light possible. She did, with her emails, she put it on a private server, which is something that all Secretary of States before her have done. It's not something really particular outrageous. And the reason it looks so bad is because the hackers who are, going into her emails and leaking them are not doing the same for the Republican Party. They are claimed to be fair and unbiased, but they are clearly they clearly have a political angle. They're clearly trying to leak out Secretary Clinton's dirty laundry, but they're not doing the same for Donald Trump or the Republican Party.
Very good, Michael. Vincent, again, he's in the news all the time, a new woman every day. What's happening here?
Well, for one, the tape of him talking about all those things, he apologized for that, and he's not a perfect guy. No one is going to be perfect. However, these accusations, they're just accusations. There's no real evidence to continue and believe them, especially since, 5 of them have been discredited almost immediately.
Were they discredited? I mean, there's I think 11, but then they got him on mic, though, saying that this is exactly what he does. He puts Tic Tacs in his mouth and forces himself on a good-looking woman.
Well, these people also came out after that tape was released. So how do we know that they didn't just hear that tape and fabricate the story along with the tape?
Well, I guess so. What about, we've already talked about abortion. Abortion is a significant controversial issue that our nation faces here, very divisive. Second, probably most divisive issue is what do we do about guns? Guns, we've seen a series of basically issues in terms of gun violence in schools, gun violence in shopping malls, theaters. How is Secretary Clinton going to deal with guns?
Before I talk about guns, I don't think I really covered Secretary Clinton's position on abortion.
Oh, so sorry. Why don't you go there first?
Yes. Now, Clinton is abashedly pro-choice. She is a huge proponent of women's health. She supported Planned Parenthood, and what Secretary Clinton wants to do is, continue the battle for women's health, continue the battle for Planned Parenthood. Republicans in certain states have been attempting and doing their best to pass laws that really slash away at the amount of women's health clinics, and that doesn't just, they aren't just abortion clinics. That's where women get mammograms. That's when women get tested for cervical cancer. For example, I think in Texas there are now three Planned Parenthood clinics left. Texas is a huge state. If you're a woman in that state and you need a mammogram, you're going to have a lot of trouble finding one.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, we've talked about abortion with Donald Trump. What about Planned Parenthood? This seems to be in the news all the time. Does he support the continued funding of Planned Parenthood?
He supports the funding for Planned Parenthood as long as they're not performing abortions.
I see, anywhere. But what about a clinic that provides strictly women's health issues and, someplace else Planned Parenthood might perform abortion? Would funding still flow to clinics like that?
He doesn't want the funding to flow to places that perform abortions.
Okay.
That's his whole thing with that.
Okay. Well, why don't we talk about, just briefly again, that question about guns?
Okay.
Do you want to start off with what's Donald Trump's position on the Second Amendment?
Sure, he's a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and he believes that the individual has a right to own a gun. However, criminals and the mentally ill do not. Also, there needs to be increased screening for people who are suspected of terrorism. Mm-hmm. So that's his stance on it.
Okay, how about Secretary Clinton?
Secretary Clinton is in strong favor of common sense gun control. This past summer, there are 4 bills related to gun control, including one that would prevent people suspected of terrorist acts from owning guns, and Republicans did not pass that bill. Secretary Clinton wants stronger background checks. She doesn't want people with felonies or with severe mental health issues or histories or suspicions of terrorism to have guns. She wants, a stronger limit on assault rifles. Quite frankly, gun violence in this country is causing a huge amount of deaths every year. And the fact that despite the fact that more than half of Americans want common sense gun control, it's been unable to get through the gridlock of Congress is just really unfortunate, and Secretary Clinton would like to do something about that.
Thank you, Michael. One of the major issues, the J. Glenn Bell Institute for Public Affairs actually sponsored in the Lane Center close by here, debate watching. And we had a great turnout of students to basically enjoy some pizza along with watching the debate collectively together. In your opinion, why don't we start with Vince, who won these debates? We had 3 kind of rancorous debates.
Well, I would say, in my opinion at least, there was no clear-cut winner. Both sides will say they won, but I don't think either side really swayed a significant amount of voters. And if that's how you count winning, then no one really won.
Okay, Michael, do you agree with that?
Absolutely not. It's clear if you look at the polls, one of the big turning points in this election was the first debate. And that's whenever people started flocking to Secretary Clinton, because Donald Trump really showed himself unfit for the presidency during those debates. He showed that he can't be stable for an hour and a half in a room with a political opponent. How are the American people supposed to expect that a man like that can sit in a room full of foreign leaders and prepared to, be calm and rational and debate with them on significant issues? This is a man who, after the debate, went on a 3 a.m. Twitter rant about Miss Universe pageant winner. The debates clearly showed what the kind of character that Donald Trump has, and the American people have seen that. And that's really why Secretary Clinton won the debate, because she was calm and rational and collected and talked about the issues, and Donald Trump did not.
Good question, though. I guess the question Vince would pose to you is, does he have the temperament to be the President of the United States? Is he going to be rash when he's upset? 3 o'clock in the morning, or will he provide the leadership that our nation needs here?
I think he definitely does have a personality, to put it mildly, but I do think he will be a very good leader for our country, and I think there's no reason to doubt that.
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your insight on these 2 candidates. We're going to return here from a break in just a moment, but please stay tuned, okay?
Got this new family. And I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy all day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who do something, the people who take action, are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Welcome back. My name is Tim Magrath. I'm the Executive Director of the J. Glenn Bell Institute for Public Affairs here at Frostburg State, as well as a full-time faculty in political science. And I have with me Michael Bartholomew representing Secretary Clinton, and we have Vincent Hession here representing Donald Trump. We have just a time for a few more questions here, and clearly in a democracy you don't always get what you want. So Vince, can you talk to me basically about, are there any things that you disapprove of in terms of your candidate?
Well, one of the things I disapprove of, and probably the biggest one I disapprove of, is his stance on spying on the public. Like, he's stated that we need to have more intelligence about the public, but it's going to be done through ways that I don't agree with. Like, for example, searching through people's phones or other things like that with the NSA. I really don't like that, but to be fair, Hillary wants the same exact thing, so it doesn't affect my opinion on him.
Very good, Vince. Michael, pose the same question to you.
Yeah, I mean, of course I disagree with some of what Secretary Clinton believes in, but that's how, the election works. You're not going to find the candidate that you agree with on all points. If everybody had that, it would be a miracle, but we don't. So this election, the American people are going to have to make the decision between decide who closest represents them. And this year that means that they have to decide between a woman with 30 years of experience, including Secretary of State and Senator of New York, and they're going to choose between her and a man who's never had political experience in their life, has gone bankrupt 4 times, and is accused of sexual assault by plenty of women. Even if you disagree on some points, you have to look at which candidate is the better candidate for the country.
Well, Vince, that's a whole bunch of stuff there. I'll give you a chance to respond to that.
Yeah. With the experience, Donald Trump has made the point many times of saying she has a lot, but it's bad experience. Mm-hmm. And she has not done the things that she said she would. Also, considering she was Secretary of State, with all the things that have been happening in the Middle East, like Syria and Libya, when Gaddafi fell and the rebels took over, and it just got worse. And now the same thing is happening in Syria, especially with what she wants with the no-fly zone. It's only going to get worse, and it's not. I really don't want her to be doing that.
Maybe just for the last word here, why don't we just summarize for our listening audience here? Why should our students, why should our viewership basically support Secretary Clinton?
So, like I said, Secretary Clinton is extremely experienced. She knows what she's doing. She has worked under the Obama administration. She has worked in the Clinton administration. She holds dear the values that most students on this campus do. There are many students I know who supported Bernie Sanders. She's incorporated many of his themes into her campaign. She wants to help college students by reducing the amount of debt going out. She wants a stronger middle class. Quite frankly, she's telling facts. She goes with facts and numbers, which is not things that Donald Trump does. I think that Hillary Clinton is the best candidate for our nation because she is someone you can actually trust to do what she says she's going to do. Thank you.
Well, good, Vince. How about you? So any kind of last words that you might want to share with our student body here at Frostburg? Why to do it?
I would say that Donald Trump should be president because his ideas is what America needs right now. Our incomes have not grown in years. Jobs have been going down, especially in the manufacturing sector. The immigration doesn't work for the people. It works for the people who want cheap labor. And Secretary Clinton will not fix those problems.
Terrific. Well, that's about all the time we have here tonight. And just a special thanks to Michael here, Michael and Vincent. They did just a terrific job for participating in our discussion today. Also, thank you to the Department of Communication, the students involved in this effort, and thank you very, very much for joining us for this election special edition. Don't forget to cast your vote November 8th for your next President of the United States. It's democracy, and democracy only works with people participating. I hope to see you there.